Guys, this is Fang here, pushing my intro, and in today's Sonic nation of Sonic's arch nemesis, Dr. Ivo Robotnik, nickname Eggman. So if you're new here, make sure to comment and subscribe, and definitely hit that bell button to know when all my levels are live. So naturally, we all know who Dr. Eggman is. We all know what he does. We all know, that the fact basically he wants to create a Eggman Empire, to create Eggman Land. We all know this. We know that one of his most iconic creations was Metal Sonic. He also created the E100 series. He created the Badniks, and he also tends to come up with plans that always ends up blowing up in his face somehow. But he's definitely one of my favorite video game antagonists of all time. He's definitely a character that, and I'm sorry if you hear some sneezing, one of my dogs. But he is a very intriguing character because even though that he's evil, he will do things right if there's something even more evil than him. A good example is in in Sonic Adventure 2, kind of a little bit in Sonic Adventure, although that was more of revenge. He didn't offer his services or his intellect to Sonic and his friends, and there's so many other examples of him actually putting his ego to the side and working with his, enemies. But there was a chance that Dr. Eggman wasn't going to serve that role. During the creation of a new mascot character for Sega, because at the time they really wanted a character that could contend with Super Mario and Naruto Oshima, basically did a lot of designs. There was the infamous rabbit one, and then, but there was one that stood out, and you guys can probably see it on the screen right now. So where basically you have this, this fat dude with sunglasses and a mustache wearing pajamas. That's actually Dr. Eggman, obviously, right? And basically, if things were a little bit different, he would have been the protagonist of this possible new game. But in my opinion, I don't think having that character, keep in mind at the time, he wasn't called Dr. Robotnik or Eggman. He wasn't a evil mad scientist. He wasn't out to destroy Sonic and his friends. At the time of this, Sonic or his friends did not even exist yet. Remember, this was during the design process of the game. So this character could have been totally different. But basically, obviously, they wanted to create a flagship series to compete with Nintendo's Mario franchise, along with a character to serve as a company mascot. Several character designs were submitted as part of a contest. Among the designs were a human character who is seen wearing pajamas and resembled U.S. President Theodore Roosevelt, drawn by Naruto Oshima. According to Oshima, the resemblance to Roosevelt was unintentional. He said he was influenced by a variety of characters. Retrospective sources have indicated that Oshima could have based the character on a common character design trope in anime. The trope in question having similarities to Eggman, sharing many of his iconic traits by being an old bald man wearing pince-nez glasses and accompanied with a bushy mustache, and coincidentally also sharing potential inspirations from Theodore Roosevelt. One that was popularized by Studio Ghibli as the works of Hayao Miyazaki was a huge inspiration for the classic era Sonic. Professor Lombash, which again, there's probably is a oh no, never mind. That's not a Studio Ghibli creation. My apologies. Professor Lombash, an antagonist in the Lupin the Third Part 2 episode, Wings of, I can't say the word on YouTube, but Wings of Oof. Albatross was the first candidate on this trope, but it seems that Motaro from Castle in the Sky was the most likely character to inspire Eggman, as it was the most inspirational Ghibli film for Sonic Team. A notable example being Angel Island, a floating island that is a recurring setting in the franchise. First introduced in Sonic, obviously first introduced in Sonic the Hedgehog 3, and is a home for Knuckles the Echidna. Inspired by the setting of the film. Laputa, which itself is based and named after Laputa of Gilbert Travels, with its design being the most similar to Eggman. As development of the Sega Genesis game Sonic the Hedgehog progressed, however, programmer Yuji Naka and the rest Sonic team thought the rejected idea was excellent and deserved inclusion in the game. Since the character could not be the protagonist, the team retooled him into the game's main antagonist. In developing Eggman, the Sonic team characterized him as Sonic's opposite. Eggman was designed to represent themes of machinery and development to play on the then growing debate between developers and environmentalists, and as a symbol for humanity, which views nature as dirty and roads and buildings as clean. The character was also designed to be easy for characters to draw. And as it turns out, his actual name, Dr. Eggman, that was always his name, even in Japan. Dr. Robotnik was actually that name was coined by Dean Seitan. I don't know how to say this gentleman's last name, of Sega of America. And apparently, Takashi Iizuka said in a Game Informer 2016 that Sega America did this without consulting the development team. And this is what he said. They just kind of went off and did it. It became super popular, and everyone in the rest kind of learned about the character as Robotnik. That went on through the classic series in the Genesis Mega Drive, but as far as the developers are concerned, we really didn't want to have any names with two names. To us, he's Eggman, but in the rest of the world, he's called Robotnik. We wanted to unify that into one name moving forward. This is something I actually did in the Sonic Adventure series. I made it so that we understand the character name is Robotnik, but his nickname is Eggman. And as far as everyone is concerned, as far as everyone is concerned in the world now, we're just going to call him Eggman as his official name. So, in Frontiers, there's even a freaking diary thing that, journal input, a voice journal that Eggman put, and I'll probably will have that voice memo play now. So yeah, it's pretty fascinating that they acknowledge the fact that Sonic gave Eggman his nickname, and he accepted it in order to spite Sonic. And ironically enough, that's pretty common to where you get nicknames, and even though that you don't want them, they kind of become a part of your identity. Like for me, one of mine on Discord is actually the edgy P to the R to the I to the C to the K. That was coined by a old friend and a fellow of CL server. I've said the story several times. I hated that name because it's like, I'm not one of those. But then what happens is you just end up embracing it. And like people have even done their own variations of it. Like I'm now called the edgy cactus and all that. It's crazy. So yeah, it's interesting because if Eggman was protagonist, how would he? Well, I feel like he would probably play kind of similar to Mario. Because remember, at the time, Mario was that benchmark that anyone that was making a platformer during that time, that was the benchmark. Nowadays, it's not like that because obviously, right, video games were still somewhat new during the Super Nintendo and Genesis era. Because you guys gotta remember is that you had the first generation gamers that started with the Atari 2600, but or the a television or the ColecoVision. I think I'm forgetting one more. The Odyssey, and because of the video game crash, sure, a lot of those kids that are now adults, you know, probably played a 2600 or played a Commodore 64, but their first true console was the NES, or of course the Master System, depending on, you know, depends on the person. But 9 times out of 10, it was the NES that was people's first console. So even though that Nintendo brought video games to the forefront, well, obviously you're going to have competitors, and Atari was still in the game during that time, kinda. Um, Unfortunately, they have never been able to reach the same success with any other console since the 2600, and that might also have something to do with maybe trust issues with consumers as well. Again, that's just a theory of mine. But this isn't about the history of video games. This is about Dr. Eggman, even though technically this is technically history on video games. This is a history on a character in a video game. I don't know why I made that so convoluted. Anyways, um, you know, that's a potential fan game, quote unquote fan game. I would actually love to do eventually is to do this what if Sega platformer, to where instead of having a blue hedgehog that's super fast going around loops and collecting rings and destroying robots, you would have the character that became Dr. Eggman being the actual protagonist. And I don't even know what the platform. I don't even know what the gameplay would be. So if I ever do decide to actually turn this idea into a full-on game, I probably would look at other platformers during the time of like Sonic's one's creation. But we'll see. That's just an idea. But yeah, just the idea of the fact that there's a timeline out there to where we never got Sonic as a character. We got this other character that in our timeline it became Robotnik or Eggman. God, like unfortunately, I don't think Sega would have been able to last if that game came out. Because remember, the reason why Sonic was so popular was because it was different than Mario. Yes, Sonic was inspired by Mario, but Sonic also had a very different gameplay. It was a platformer, but it was a different animal compared to Mario. Yes, you can jump. Yes, you can jump on enemies. That's basic platformer 101. But you could also curl into a ball. You had loops. You had these amazing obstacle courses. And even though that a lot of gamers like to say that the first Sonic game, quote unquote, aged poorly due to the fact that the games that came after improved upon the foundations that Sonic once set, Sonic 1 still has some great, great, like, parts of those levels. I mean, the first two acts of Green Hill Zone, well, correction, the first three acts of Green Hill Zone, iconic. You know, um, um, you know, yeah, those levels in those games just have some very iconic. You know, that game has a very iconic. You know, and even though that it's interesting to think about the what if, much like with the Terios short I did, or I think I did that as a video actually. Yeah, I did that as a video. Um, I'm glad it. I'm glad this possible new protagonist became a villain that we all know. And if this video does well, who knows? I might do a video on the development of Sonic, which that's going to be a long video. That might actually be split up into two different parts, maybe. But yeah, that's it for this video. I hope you all was very informed by this. If I missed anything, definitely comment down below. If I got anything wrong, comment down below. Let's have a discussion about this. And yeah, I'll be seeing you all in the next video. Later, guys.